Hi, everyone. Welcome to Turning Point. I'm your host, Blaine Birch. And joining me today is Nicole McKenzie, CEO and founder of Momentum Accounting, an entrepreneur herself, but also someone that helps entrepreneurs. So it's like a 2-for-1 today, which is really cool. Thanks for joining us on the show today, Nicole.
Hey, Blaine. It's always a risk having an accountant on a podcast, so I appreciate you having me on.
Well, we've talked before, and we had a great conversation. So I know that it's going to be kind of a fun conversation today. But I will admit the odd time talking to some accountants, so we're a little bit more on the dry side. But I think we're going to be good today. So and you know the big thing is because you are again you're an entrepreneur yourself, so you've been through the grind, you're going through the grind, and that's just such a that's such an engaging part of the stories we like to explore here. So. But let's go back a little bit to how and when did you first get kind of interested, I guess, in being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so when I was in college, I gravitated toward business, and I decided to, when I was in high school, my dad said, you're good at math, you should be a bean counter. And so naturally, I wanted nothing to do with accounting. And when I got to college, I ended up liking accounting and finance out of all the courses I took. So I also went to college. I graduated in 2010. And so I was coming off of, 2008, recession. So for me, I was looking for job security at that time. And so I knew that the CPA route, accounting route was the best job security. And I also knew that accounting was a great foundation if you ever wanted to do anything in business. And so I went into public accounting, did the traditional CPA thing, did financial statement audits, did taxes. And then at some point I found myself looking around and thinking, man, I don't know if I chose the right profession for myself. I was taking career tests. I was, I liked what I did and I loved working with business owners. But there was just something missing for me. And that was the only job I'd ever have was at that CPA firm. But I was lucky in that there was a transition happening in the accounting industry. So just a quick, hopefully not too boring history lesson on accounting. Historically, small business owners, the only option they had to fill the finance and accounting function in their business was, usually it was the spouse's or the owner's spouse, wife, the office manager, a bookkeeper, someone doing data entry, and then they would talk to their CPA once or twice a year.
Yeah.
And within the last decade, there's been a ton of new technology in the accounting space. And so when I graduated college, it was like you did audit or tax, and now there's a third career path for accountants, and that third career path is outsourced accounting, which is what I do.
Yeah. And
so when I was at that firm, they added on outsourced accounting, and this was the emergence of the QuickBooks Online and Xero and all the apps and ecosystem and Dry Run, all these tools that plug into Xero and QuickBooks Online. And so I was able to switch from the tax department to the outsourced accounting department. And that's when I was like, oh, this is what I was meant to do, because I was working in the day-to-day ops of small business owners. I was helping them with challenging situations from, what technology should I use to how do I make sure that I can pay my people next week, And so I loved both of those sides of it. And so that's, I ended up leaving that firm. I was there for 6 years, left that firm in 2016, and just kind of got burnt out and wanted to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. So I left that firm, and at some point I had a job opportunity for a full-time, 6-figure job at an insurance company. It would have been boring as hell. And then I had an opportunity to go work for an ex-NFL football player as his, basically was my first client. And so I remember traveling I was in Paris on a vacation. After I quit the job, my boyfriend and I, we went to Europe, and I was trying to make the decision of, do I go the safe route and do I take the job, or do I take this risk and, take on this as my first client? And I remember talking to another CPA, and he was like, Nicole, you can always go back and get a job. You have a CPA license. You're very marketable in terms of employment. So I decided to take the risk and ended up in going and working for that ex-NFL football player. You guys might be familiar with him if you're in the Bay Area, Ronnie Lott. So that was really how it started my entrepreneurial journey. And I started from there.
You know, it's and I never, I'll be honest with you, I don't think of this sort of approach with accountants, but it's such a familiar story because, you know, you came with a numbers background, which is really, you know, fortunate, but you know, I came from a design background. So of course I started a creative agency and sort of built that up. That was my first business. But it's a familiar story that, you know, entrepreneurs so often they have a marketable skill, a marketable product, and they say, okay, I'm going to leap out and that's how I'm going to get started. And then they learn business along the way. But you know, you're fortunate you've had some of those business learnings that a lot of us missed. Like we learned the hard way, I guess. And so, you know, you had that foundation, but what were some of the gaps? Because everyone is going to have gaps, right? Like, so what were some of the gaps that you felt as you started your business that maybe you weren't prepared for?
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, I was lucky in that by that time I'd probably worked with over 100 different businesses on a smaller scale than I have in the last 6 years. But so it was really easy for me I started with just doing, you know, I'm going to be your fractional controller. So I'd work with businesses. And I would say the biggest gap for me has actually been the marketing side of things. And more recently, so up until COVID, all of the clients and leads I got came from business development. I'm part of a local networking group called Provisors. So, you know, driving around the Bay Area, spending all my time shaking hands, going to events. And then COVID happened and I realized I didn't have that consistent flow or the ability to go out and do networking anymore. So I was like, you know what, I want to figure out this online marketing thing. And I've probably thrown away like tens of thousands of dollars, probably over $50,000 on hiring the wrong people and spending money in the wrong places. And so when I think about accounting and marketing in running a business, I think it's almost like fire and ice, and they're totally opposite. And so we work actually with a lot of marketing agencies, and they need us a lot. And on the marketing side, it's my biggest gap and biggest insecurity. So I'm slowly learning all of the different parts of marketing. And I think it's a lot like accounting, where there's a lot of different roles in an accounting department. And you think, oh, accounting, I need an accountant. But like, do you need a bookkeeper? Do you need a CFO? Do you need payroll? Like there's all these different, or do you need a controller? There's all these different roles. And the same thing with marketing. There's, you know, there's SEO, there's outbound, there's inbound, there's digital, there's branding. And so trying to find the right resource for your business is really challenging. And so I wish I would have not just implicitly trusted people when I hired them, because when I say I'm going to do something, I typically do it. And I think for the most part, accountants are pretty like if anything, they're more modest than their actual abilities, where in the marketing space, you get people who, you know, there's not like a degree to say that I'll hang up a shingle and say I run a digital marketing firm. And so I made the mistake of trusting people when they said they were going to be able to deliver. And then also I think it gets really exhausting having to re-explain your business to someone over and over again. But in order for someone to be able to share your messaging correctly, someone has to understand your business. And so I wish I would have invested my time in the right people to begin with, so I wouldn't have to done it over and over again. And I'm still trying to figure it out, getting closer, but it's been challenging. Yeah,
we still struggle with that. It's such a hard part, and we have gaps. Like we've been traditionally very good. Like in my agency days, we were extremely good at outbound and networking, and that's how we got all of our work. Never very good at inbound. Even now we're trying to make that balance out. And like you said, especially early on, like the amount of money like I'll match your 50. We've done the same thing as like flushed out toilet. Yeah. Oh, that didn't work. And it sneaks up on you because you go for quite a long time, and it's hard to to get that attribution and go like, did this actually work? It takes a long time and a lot of money to go, nope. And it's such a hard part, and it's that plagues so many businesses, and we've done the same thing you did, is you sort of go back and you go, okay, let's get this right from a foundation level all the way up and do it right, not fast. So how do we do this right? How do we get that? Who's our ideal customer? What are their concerns? How do we message them? All these things. So you get the recipe book that works, right? And it's such a challenge for business owners, and I can imagine, you guys would battle exactly the same thing we do. Like, how do you get that message out there?
Yeah, and it changes so fast. It's like by the time you talk to somebody and then you think you have it nailed down, and then you move on to the next person you're working with, and they're using an old customer persona that you had from a year ago. You're like, my business has completely changed. It's like you need someone to come along with you on that journey. And it's just been really challenging for me to wrap my head around. I'm like back to the point where I'm like, I'm going back to networking again because that worked.
Yeah. I was always the most successful with that. And with what we're doing now with Dry Run, of course, we've got to get to people all over the place. It's just a little bit different model, but in our agency days when we were offering those services, that was just literally how we got all our work. It was just 99.9% networking outbound, basically going hunting for those customers that you knew would probably give you the best chance of finding that opportunity, and then getting referrals and repeat business. And that's how we built it. And it worked, but it's a lot of legwork. And how do you balance that out with the sort of that generating those leads, marketing and all of that, and sales from actually delivering your service?
Yeah, so I would say the most impactful thing I did was, I think probably 3.5, 4 years ago, I hired a COO, and a lot of people have probably read, the EOS books, but there's this idea of the visionary and the integrator. And at the time when I hired her, I'd never even heard of those terms. And I was looking for another accountant to just service the work. And she sent me a Loom video, saw my posting on LinkedIn, and was like, I don't want to do the accounting work. We didn't even have a name for it at the time. Like now I call her my COO. But that was, hiring her was super impactful in allowing me to actually get out of the day-to-day ops of running the business, right? So it freed me up to do a lot more biz dev. She actually does most of our sales calls now. We put in a proposal software and system around sales, which is really helpful. And then as far as like business development goes, LinkedIn has been a great lead source for us as well. So I do a lot of posting on LinkedIn, and that has helped me. So it's like the followers and the people that I engage with on LinkedIn, most of them I've actually met in person. So it's just like throughout the last 7 years, all the people I've met along the way, utilizing LinkedIn as a tool to stay in front of them. And then more recently have been doing YouTube videos, because I realized a lot of what we're doing, we were attracting I would say like a little bit smaller clients than we were coming across as more of like a commodity bookkeeping firm. And I realized that we weren't explaining exactly what we do very well. And so I started doing these YouTube videos and posting them on LinkedIn, and immediately our ideal client profile, 3 in a week came in. And so I would say like that, and that's more of a recent discovery of like, wow, you really have to, especially when you're selling a service that is more complex. And I would say accounting is complex. It requires building a relationship. I tried doing outbound on LinkedIn. It didn't work for a little while. It felt gross. I hated it. Someone said, yeah, it will work. But you depending on what you're selling, right? Software is a little bit different. If it's going to solve somebody's problem, I'll try out this software versus something like accounting, where it's very relationship based, and you have to build trust, and you have to prove your expertise, and you have to show like why you're different than the other bookkeeping firm that's $300 a month, and why. And so there's just a lot of education that I realized needed to be done.
Yeah. And it's more similar than you think with software, because it's the same thing. Like you have to build trust. They're comparing us to other products where and a lot of it is strangely, there is in the end some relationship building that really comes about. And I still maintain that it almost doesn't matter what type of business it is. It still comes down to people. They're making the decisions. It's relationship building and credibility and trust is such a big factor. And it's got harder because now everyone's stuck, for years you're kind of stuck in, everyone's stuck at home, stuck in the basement. And it's just recent that I actually started to be able to venture out, like actually be in public again. And I didn't realize how much I missed that. Like, I felt like I was hidden away, and then I was just at South by Southwest a couple months ago. And and all of a sudden it's like, you're just networking for 7 days straight. That's all you're talking with people in giant crowds, but it felt nice to be back out in the wild, I guess, again. And there's just nothing quite like that in person.
Yeah, Blaine, to your point on the personal relationship, even in the software space, I go to a ton of accounting conferences. I mean, I don't, like, work-life balance for me isn't a thing. I'm just like, this is my life. I'm in accounting and I live my life. And so I go to all the conferences. I mean, in 2 weeks, I'm going to Seaside, Florida with like 20 people in the accounting space where you just like get together and talk about firm stuff. But I have so many good friends that are software partners where like I see them, we go out together, we're in Vegas, we're going out, and that, like, as a CEO showing up to those conferences, it's incredibly important to build rapport with your customers and listen to what their needs are. And because I like you, or because I like, I'm going to go out and tell all of my other accounting friends, even if it's not the best software in the space. And so I think relationships are hugely important in business, and we can't just hide behind a screen and work from home all the time. We really need to be getting out there and building those relationships, because you never know who could be the next person that's going to introduce you to somebody that could be a huge sale for you. Yeah,
exactly. And you learn more about the problem. Like, Zoom calls, I always find, are just that they're short and they're too focused. And when you get to talk with someone over a drink or whatever, and it's like it just gets so much deeper. And it's like you start learning about the other challenges in their business. And suddenly it's like, yeah, okay, I didn't realize that. We can actually help you with that. Or what's slowing you down? Where can we help you? That just doesn't come out in a 30-minute Zoom meeting. And it's hard because, like, for us, we can't be everywhere because our customers are in 70 some countries, like, across the globe.
Yeah. But
we still try and, how do we get out there and talk with our clients and get to know them more and build some relationships up? And it's tricky, but it's so important, and it feels nice to, I think, feel like the world's opened up again a little bit more, or it just feels more normal now, I guess, than it did, in the last few years. So.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of times business owners, at least what I find for as being an advisor to small business owners, is that a lot of times the surface level problem that the business owner thinks that they have or says that they have is you have to have that conversation, the back and forth, and you really like get down to the heart of what the issue is. And a lot of times we as business owners can't articulate, like, with going back to the marketing thing, even for me, when I'm trying to communicate my frustration with it or try to articulate what I want, I have a hard time doing that because it's not my area of expertise. And so those in-person conversations that are more natural, you'll hear the client say something, you're like, oh, that's your problem, and we can help you solve it. And having that deeper understanding of what your customers' motivations are can help you build a better solution for them.
Yeah, we rely so much on talking with customers. It's just amazing what you can learn from those conversations, and trying to dig deeper. That's just getting to know much more than just the surface, but like how do they live? What are all of the other challenges? And for us, and probably the same thing for you. It's like they can have all sorts of challenges in the business, but eventually it all comes down to money. Like it's all filters down and affects that money, and that just helps us get a better picture of the challenges they're facing and how do we help them. And like we know we've done a great job when they're not in dry run every day. Like as the business owners, like, no, we're trying to keep them doing their work. We're trying to give them critical information Monday and Friday or whatever, like quickly, so that they can actually go and do their job. And that's a bit counterintuitive to the software world where everyone thinks, well, the more they're in, the better. Oh, no, if they're in there all day, every day, that's not a good thing for us, right? And it's just trying to figure out how do we help them. And it's interesting to think about how similar entrepreneurs are and how similar their challenges are, but also the client challenges are. You know, it comes down to money and people.
Yeah, and a lot of times, you know, our job isn't necessarily as advisors, right? It's not necessarily to tell the business owner what to do, because the business owner is the expert in their field. It's really just to help assure them that the decision they're making is going to be a good decision. And so if we can help them through using tools like Dry Run, which starts with having great accounting, right? Like you can't just plug in something like Dry Run to QuickBooks Online or Xero and hope that and I think it's going to be a magic bullet, right? It's a whole system. And so if we can help them build that foundation and they can plug it in the Dry Run and then be able to answer the question, like, if I take on this project or hire this employee, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be able to pay my mortgage. And it's not just business isn't just in a box, right? It's like most business owners are solopreneurs. Everything, you know, they got other financial interests going on. They may have a mortgage. They may have more access to money. They may have a business partner. One business partner may be more willing to take risks, where another business partner has a family and is on a tight budget. And so we as advisors have to be aware of all those other factors that are playing in their emotional decisions so that we can help them make the best decision for them based on their unique situation.
Yeah. And I think like you sort of alluded to the fact, like that's something we rely on, is the books have to be, of course, up to date. And it sounds like an accounting problem or bookkeeping problem, but no, it's a business problem, because for a business owner, it's flying blind if they don't have the information, right? And where we see the most success is when the business owners and their accountant and oftentimes other stakeholders as well are really collaborating. And it's so frustrating at times when I'm talking with business owners and there's a wall. There's a wall, you know, it's there's still business owners we talk with that meet with their accountant like kind of quarterly, or bookkeeping is in a desktop product that they don't have access to and they don't see it till 3 months later. And like you're flying blind. And I think it's so important to have, honestly, we need more accountants like you. We need more firms like you that are, looking at I think in a lot of ways, the business owner's best interest and saying, we need to be able to work together. We need to get this information to you. And we can't offer any sort of insight, advice, or anything without being able to talk with you about the business problems and really understanding where you're at, rather than what I think was, you know, the way I first ran my agency, 20 years ago, when it was the box of receipts and you're kind of blind the whole time.
Yeah, I think a lot of accountants, and in their defense, a lot of them are tax focused, right? They're great at knowing the tax law. And so typically they're putting financial statements together so that the business owner can file their tax return. And they're not looking at what's your AP process, what's your accounts receivables process, what payment process are you using. And it's really building that operational accounting system where we have AP, we have AR, we have cash, we know what's going out, we know what's coming in, and then we can plan. But if you're not reconciling your bank transactions coming in at least weekly, then your accounts receivable aging isn't up to date, and you don't know who to go chase down to pay you. If you don't have somebody advising you on how you can negotiate better payment terms with your clients and the importance of getting paid up front, you're going to run into cash flow issues. If you don't have somebody that's helping you implement a spend management platform like Ramp or Divvy, so that you can actually understand the departmental spend or client spend, or making sure that your employees aren't stealing with you, then you're going to run into issues there. So we get much more into the ops side of accounting, and it really is a full system that has to work together, with the end result being that you have financial information that's up to date that you can make decisions with. But without all that foundational work and somebody guiding that process, you'll never get there.
Yeah, yeah, and I've never asked this before because it just sort of dawned on me. But do you think it's more effective to have that sort of operational, forward-looking accountant and systems and processes accountant as the same person that does tax and compliance, or do you think it actually at this point might be more grab your specialist to do your tax and compliance, grab your specialist to help you look forward and deal with your operations?
Yeah, so I don't know if I said what we did exactly yet, but we don't do any compliance, or we don't do any taxes. My background is I'm a CPA. I used to do taxes. I decided I didn't want to deal with tax season anymore. But your tax accountant is working 80 hours a week during tax season, which is 6 months out of the year. So they are not going to be able. They don't. So what we do is we operate within an accounting department. You've got, if we think about roles in an accounting department, right? You have a bookkeeper, you have the accounts payable department, you have the accounts receivable department, you have a controller, you have a CFO. And small business owners don't need, and I'll define it, typically the clients we work with are like 1 to 10 million in revenue. They need all of those functions, but if let's say they have a $60,000 per year budget, they could hire a bookkeeper, but that bookkeeper isn't going to be able to help them with those controller and CFO level things that they need. They can hire a CFO, but they're going to be overpaying for somebody to do collections for them, right? And so what we do is we are embedded in our client's business. We understand their vendors. We understand their customers. We're helping them make better decisions. We're, resource for them that they can email or text or call, and we'll get back to them within 30 minutes or an hour, versus their tax accountant who is spending their time researching the tax law, who's helping them optimize, who's hopefully helping them planning because we've got the books up to date so they can plan. And it really is a different role. And even the firms that offer both, and I know this because I worked at a CPA firm, is the CAS, what's called the CAS, Client Accounting Services, is the outsourced accounting department, isn't even talking to the tax accountant or tax department anyway. Like, they're two completely different departments if they're running it properly. Anybody that's trying to do both you're not going to get an answer for 6 months during busy season. So it really is two completely different things. And actually a lot of tax accountants aren't necessarily great business advisors because, especially unless, some of them, they're firm owners, get into that side of things. But like when I was doing taxes, I didn't know anything about running the business. You get the numbers at the end of the year and you put them in a tax return. So it's confusing. The language is super confusing in America because when you say accountant, it can mean 20 different things. And if you say CPA, it could be, there's different types. I'm a CPA, but I don't do taxes anymore. There's also financial statement CPAs that do audits for, companies that have investors or nonprofits, right? It's a whole different topic. But it's really confusing, and it's really confusing for business owners when they're trying to figure out who they need to fill that gap because they know that something's missing, but they can't articulate what they need or who they need.
Yeah, and that was exactly my sense that it that's why I wanted to ask you, because it was my sense that it really doesn't make sense to have the same person doing both. That it's just one is just everyday operations, and you can't stop for tax season, and it's just a completely different role, but a very different mindset as well. Both necessary, but like as an entrepreneur, like we've worked with we've worked with a lot of businesses, we've worked with a lot of financial professionals as well. But it took me basically working with everyone through Dry Run to really get a sense of those different buckets. When I had an agency for over a decade, just exactly you said, accountant, do my taxes. Like that was literally that's all I knew. Just do my taxes. And maybe there is a need for a new, lingo or whatever to be able to really separate it so that it's very clear that this is tax, but this is your advisor. But you don't want to say financial advisor because that's something different. Yet again, I don't know what the answer is, but I think there is a lot of confusion amongst entrepreneurs and business owners on what they need and who can help them with what.
Yeah, and like I said, it's until I started doing those videos, finally it clicked for people because same thing I think that you experience where you probably had somebody internally paying your bills and sending out your invoices and sort of like helping you with that. But those processes are tied into delivery of the financial statements. And so it needs to be a cohesive experience. And that was the old way of doing things. But now there is a new way with outsourcing, which I'm obviously biased, that I think that's a much better solution because of the expertise that an outsourced accounting provider can bring versus an in-house or trying to piece it together with an admin or whoever else is managing that process. But the AICPA, which is the governing body for accountants, is so the terminology they came out for it when it was new was CAS, Client Accounting Services, and we're like, we use that internally, accountants know, but we can't bring that to the market. Nobody knows what that means. Outsourced accounting is confusing because people think that you're offshoring, and it's like, well, no, not necessarily. Like, it's just I think of outsourcing as a core function in your business that you have a third party that's not a W-2 employee do on a recurring basis. So marketing can be outsourced, accounting can be outsourced, IT's always been outsourced. But it's just a little bit of a newer concept for those people who've had businesses over 10 years ago. That's just it's not something that they were familiar with.
Well, and the other thing that like we're most of the companies we work with are multi-million-dollar businesses, and that's like you're talking about that 1 to 10 million. Well, that's kind of the sweet spot that we're generally in as well. The challenge there is you don't usually get a multi-million-dollar company in 2, 3, 5 years. It's 5 plus, probably 10.
Yeah,
which means they're a lot of times established businesses have business owners that have built systems 10 years ago and still haven't maybe caught up with the times, or they're kind of tiptoeing in because they're busy running their business, and they're in dire need of it. But I don't even think they realize like what cloud accounting can do for them, what the different systems plug together, how much time it can save, the optics and the insight that they can get. I think if they saw it, I think some of them would be like actually blown away by like a full complete system with someone that's helping, could transform their business immensely. Yeah.
One of our, I'd say like when I first started, and actually still to this day, I think one of the most areas where we can add the most value or transformation that we've done has been family-owned businesses that have been around for 30, 40 years, and they have somebody in-house who's retiring, and just it's a lot of work. It's a lot of change management. It's stressful for the business owner to like let go of the reins on that because it's the way it's always been done. But we can come in and just completely revamp their entire finance function and give them real-time access to data that they've never had. And it's just transformational. I love doing that type of work because it's challenge. Like I said, it's very challenging because you have to, you're constantly selling the business owner on like, trust the process. It's going to work. We're going to implement bill.com. We're going to implement this online software. But then the end result, when they get the real-time data, and then also they can travel and they don't have to come to the office and sign checks. They're like, oh, this is kind of nice. I like this.
Yeah. I've we were using cloud back in, different, during when I had an agency, we were using cloud tools back then. And, even with dry run, like we were fairly early in the sort of the cloud world, but, I can't imagine going back, like not being able to just log in and get to whatever it is I need today. Like here, this like even recording this this podcast, we're using a new like cloud-based podcast recording tool that is just leaps and ahead of anything that we used before. And I couldn't go back to desktop. I barely have anything on desktop anymore. It's just it's a different world. And I think once you see the power of it and the mobility in it, I think a lot of businesses were shocked into it when they had to leave the office and suddenly their staff is at home. And my team has always been remote, and it was just like, now we're good. We're carry on as usual from anywhere, right?
Yeah. My biggest pet peeve is when somebody sends me an email with something to print out and sign. and I'm like, can you please use an e-signature software?
I had to do that. just a couple of weeks ago, and I can't remember what it was I had to sign, probably for a bank or something, but they needed an actual signature. Well, my printer had been sitting so long that everything was dried up, and I'm like, it's just a scanner now. I can't print, and I'm not buying ink.
Yeah.
So I literally had to go all over to Staples and print something out so I could sign it and scan it and send it. And it was ludicrous. It felt like going back to fax machine days.
And I think
but hopefully it's almost gone.
No, it still happens. It's I think what happens usually it's when businesses or people that I don't do my own taxes. I haven't done it in like 8 years. So my tax accountant still does that, and it drives me crazy. But I think they're working in an office environment, so in their mind they're imagining like, oh, it's super easy to print out something. It's actually easier to print out something and sign it, and I can give it to my admin who's going to scan it back in. But for those of us who are working at home, we don't have an admin here, so you're going to take out, it's going to take me 20 minutes probably because my printer also never works. So anyway, that's just my rant about printing.
Yeah, it's I used to have a printer in here. I was talking about my other office, and I don't even think it's gone. I just realized, don't even have it. I got a record player where my printer used to be, which is hilarious because I've actually gone analog for music in my office, which is so much fun. I think just to get away from a little bit of digital. So I got some analog in.
The IRS, you still have to, if you want to talk to the IRS on behalf of a taxpayer, you have to have the taxpayer has to sign a form. And then I remember doing this when I worked at a CPA firm. You call the IRS. Once you get them on the line, you say, hold on a second. And then you have to take the form and fax it to them while you're on the call. They get the fax, make sure that, say, okay, now you can talk to me about the client. It's crazy.
That's just
why I couldn't handle that drove me crazy.
Yeah. And I don't think government's going to move anytime quickly. I'm sure that'll be the same 10 years from now. I hope not, but it won't surprise me if it is. So, so let's sort of fast forward today. It's really interesting hearing about sort of how you got started and some of the challenges and everything, but who are you, what are you doing today? Who are you serving? How do people get in touch with you? All the, because I know we are just such strong believers in businesses like yours, and you are a rarity. We talk with a lot of accountants and bookkeepers. You guys are a rarity in what you're doing and the services you're offering. And I know firsthand how valuable they are. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing today.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So we work with growing businesses. So typically B2B service businesses, SaaS businesses are good clients for us. And we really want to be for most of our clients, we're not just a vendor. I'm more focused on providing high impact for a fewer number of clients, right? So right now we have about 35 to 40 recurring monthly clients. The most I ever want to have is 60. So I want to stay boutique and stay very embedded in our clients' businesses. So for us, the sweet spot is we're really your full accounting department. And what that looks like, again, is that $1 to $10 million business where we can help you at a smaller scale at $1 million, and then we're still going to be with you at 10 million, but you're probably going to be working with more people on our team, and we're going to know your business intimately and grow with you. So that's really the end goal is just to grow that portfolio of businesses that we can help and help other businesses succeed. As far as location, we've got, we can work with businesses anywhere. Our team's remote. I've got a team of 8. We're all across in different states. A couple of us in the Bay Area, so we do go to offices sometimes if we need to do tech implementations. Again, that older business or the older business where the in-house accountant is retiring, we can come on site and do some implementation. Mm-hmm. For the most part, we do everything remotely. Yeah.
And how did they find you? I was just waiting to say, but how can they find you? Yeah.
So momentumaccounting.com is our website. You can go there, and then you can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Probably can get a hold of me faster there than on a text message, to be honest. And it's Nicole, Nikole McKenzie.
Terrific. And again, Nicole McKenzie, Momentum Accounting. MandoCounty.com. Please look them up. I know how much help you guys are doing for your clients right now, and how much you can help business owners out there that are need that insight, need that operational efficiency, and need those systems up to date so they know exactly where they're going. So this was a great conversation, Nikole, and I really enjoyed hearing about, we talk with so many accountants, but oftentimes we don't get to talk about, how you build and grow your own firm and some of the struggles that you guys face just as entrepreneurs. So it was really, really great having you on the show today.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks everyone for listening. Again, I'm Blaine Birch, co-founder and CEO at Dry Run, and we will help you, especially if you have lumpy cash flow, figure out where you're going with your cash flow, what your sales pipeline looks like, help you sleep at night. Come and talk with us, dryrun.com. We'd love to help you out.